Hey guys, Rukshan here and welcome to another episode of In Case You Missed It. This is a weekly wrap-up of some of the news stories that I might have not been able to cover or that you might have missed during the week. First up, I have this Senate hearing that happened in Australia, which was very explosive. It's garnered a lot of attention on the internet, on social media, and on the alternative press, but it's an issue that the mainstream media in Australia or around the world don't really want to touch. And that is that these reps from Pfizer and Moderna, representatives in Australia, were grilled by senators in a Senate hearing to do with COVID vaccinations and mandates. Now, this particular hearing is available in full. It goes for a few hours. You can find it on the Parliament's website, the Federal Parliament's website. It is called the Senate Education and Employment Committee. That's the hearing name, and I'll actually link to this, but you can watch it in full. So it's very interesting. I think the questions to the Moderna reps, Pfizer, and I think also Atagi is there as well. Very, very interesting. But I'm just going to give you the short form of this. And you might have already seen some of these videos if you follow me on other social media platforms. And I also posted one video on YouTube. But I'm going to play these again anyway for anyone that's missed it. And I'll just discuss what this all actually means. Because, like I said, we have a media in this country who are not curious whatsoever to look into these answers that these reps are giving and share this with the general public. But we're going to do that right here today, okay? So let me get to the first video.
You actually made a comment that no one was forced to have the vaccination. You must have been fully aware that people, nurses, doctors, people to have their jobs, to keep their jobs, were forced to have the vaccination. Now, do you retract your statement that they were not forced?
Senator, no, I believe firmly that nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
Get the jab or risk losing your job. That's the ultimatum facing hundreds of thousands of essential workers tonight.
I believe everybody was offered an opportunity to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. I don't believe that anybody was forced to take a vaccine.
Coercion is not consent, but that won't matter for authorised workers if they want to keep their job.
Well, then they won't be going to work.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
If you make the judgment to not get vaccinated and you reckon you can wait out us or the publican or whoever you want to think you're waiting out.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
Life will become very difficult for the unvaccinated from January 31.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
No gym, no yoga classes. No gigs, no dance floors. No hospital or aged care visits.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
Message snuffed out at Moonee Ponds, Knox and Mordialloc by police.
I'm not taking lectures on freedom.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
If an employer allows an unvaccinated staff member on site, they can be fined more than $21,000 and the business will be hit with almost a $110,000 fine. Workers who falsely claim they've had the jab will wear a $10,000 fine.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
About some people not wanting to take vaccines.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
If you think you can not have a vaccine just because you don't want to have a vaccine.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
What a hide you have. What a ridiculous position is that?
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
Don't play that game of let's just wait them out and then we'll be able to do everything we want to do and have not got jabbed. No, that will not be the case here.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
It's a little bit controversial, the mandate, because some people, they feel very active and stronger to the mandate, but also on the other hand, it works.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
That they put a mandate. Actually, they put mandate if you don't get vaccinated and you're above 60 years old, €100 per month penalty.
It's a fine.
It's a fine.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
Because they work. I've seen it. Even at Pfizer, we had to make a mandate to ask our people, and although we were at 90%, but this 90 was not moving, and it moved to 97%.
You got it up to what?
97. Vaccinated, so it's a very big deal.
Nobody was forced to have a vaccine.
A lot of Australians will disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, so that was Senator Pauline Hanson asking that question. And if you're noticing that video, I've actually spliced together stuff from the past that was said by our leaders. And at the end, I had a little Easter egg there from Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, actually acknowledging that punitive mandates, these kind of coercive mandates, actually work to increase vaccine uptake. They acknowledge it, so they know that these type of measures work, and that is why they're structured in this manner. But you saw during that questioning, you had these two blokes from Pfizer. Look at these guys; they just look like the biggest bozos. And look, they did what these corporate lawyer style, regulator shills that work for these companies do, and that is give non-answers and pretend that everyone has forgotten the history of all of this and pretend like none of these things actually ever happened. A lot of people would call this type of statements that they're making gaslighting. I mean, you can definitely see why when I put splice those videos together. When we talk about force, we have to consider this in the terms of coercion, right? People were told that they would not have their jobs, they could not feed their families, have a roof over their heads, they would lose careers which they've been working for in decades in some instances if they did not participate in the government's, non-forced vaccination mandate, regime that they ran during that time. And I think a lot of people would be offended by these type of answers that they're giving today, and this type of pretending. Now, we can't put all this blame squarely on companies like Pfizer and Moderna, who are also asked similar questions, because at the end of the day, it's our government that actually pushed these things through, right? And the people complied and went through with it. So not all the blame and fault can be put to Pfizer, but you see when you put these questions to them, they're happy to distort reality. And I think this is why the mainstream media won't cover these type of hearings, right? They won't show this type of discrepancies in what they're saying and what they've said, previously, or what's actually happened in reality. And it's, again, sad that it's up to, people on social media, alternative media, just everyday people to actually show these people up. This is newsworthy stuff is what I'm trying to say, but of course it's being ignored. Now, there were some other great examples. I'm going to show you one more. There are a couple that I can't show on here, which are only available on some of the platforms like X. And also, if you watch the actual hearing at Parliament, these are questions from Senator Gerard Rennick around myocarditis and what Pfizer knew. These are questions around, things like transmission. All of these things, of course, can be a bit dubious on these so-called platforms like YouTube and so on, which tend to do a bit of censorship around these issues. But you can check out that full hearing because it's very interesting that they couldn't answer even questions about myocarditis and what Pfizer knew and how they handled these things. So the other one that I have is just to show you just how blatantly these regulators, Pfizer, these people that work for Pfizer actually, in my opinion, lie. Now, there was a question from Senator Malcolm Roberts from One Nation to these Pfizer reps about whether Pfizer engages in any type of fraudulent or, this type of activity when it comes to their trials and so on. And they, outright, this guy says, no, we'd never do this. We always act in the manner that's lawful with the regulations of a country. We never do this. But many people that have been following Pfizer and researching companies like this, that Pfizer is involved in a lot of sketchy type of situations with lawmakers in different countries. And in one instance, they were fined almost $2.3 billion by the US government for engaging in fraudulent marketing of their products. So, look, I'm going to play this video. Again, make up your mind about these blokes. And this is why I think it's important that the work that these senators are doing. And a lot of these senators are from One Nation, Pauline Hanson, of course, Senator Malcolm Roberts. We do have Senator Alex Antic there asking questions as well, Gerard Rennick and Matt Canavan. So it's a bit of a cross, but it's mostly the conservative style centre-right politicians who are doing this and leading this charge, rather than, of course, the Labour Party, who don't seem to really care about any of this.
Does your contract with the government for supply of COVID injections include a clause that negates your indemnity in the event of Pfizer committing a crime such as fraudulent treatment of trial data?
Senator, Pfizer always abides by all of the laws and regulations of the markets in which it operates. It abides by the highest standards for clinical trials and all its operations.
In a combination civil and criminal settlement, Pfizer has agreed to pay $2.3 billion, the largest healthcare fraud settlement in the history of the Department of Justice. Within that $2.3 billion is a criminal fine of $1.195 billion, which makes it the largest criminal fine in history.
Senator, Pfizer always abides by all of the laws and regulations of the markets in which it operates.
Public health may be at risk, and there's a real danger for patients that the medical providers who prescribed the medicine or the device aren't provided with, don't have full information about the drug's risks and benefits.
It abides by the highest standards for clinical trials and all its operations.
The Office of the Inspector General in this department, and Dan Levinson is here on the stage with me this morning, spent 4 years in the conduct of this investigation. They didn't just implicate Pfizer. They actually identified and charged the senior managers who were responsible for the fraud.
Senator, Pfizer always abides by all of the laws and regulations of the markets in which it operates.
Look, these people are full of crap. And this is why I think it's so important that these contracts that the government signed with Pfizer, it's all, hidden, which should be made public, right? And in particular, of particular concern is the fact that there's protections for them that, indemnify them of having any responsibility for the things that happen when people take their products. And that's the case in Australia. Taxpayers cover the costs of injuries and deaths related to their products. Now, Senator Babet from the United Australia Party, he recently introduced a bill just a couple of days ago to remove this indemnity and to ensure that these manufacturers like Pfizer, like Moderna, are they themselves responsible for covering those type of costs, right? I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes complete and absolute sense to any normal person that the manufacturer of a product should take responsibility for their product. But of course, our government is more than willing to sign these secret deals and hand over our taxpayer dollars to protect these companies when things don't go their way. Now, again, this particular bill that is being introduced into Parliament by Senator Babet, no media coverage of this, right? There's no coverage of any of this, and in my opinion, this bill most likely will not be successful because of the structure of our political class, who are more than happy to work alongside Big Pharma and protect them. But at least it will show you which of these politicians actually support the side of the people, right? Protecting people against these companies. At least when they vote on this, we will get to see this tally of who's for and who's against this. So in that respect, I think it's important, but again, we're seeing a complete lack of media coverage. And, this is not the first time, like with Pfizer, Albert Bourla, he pulled out of testifying. So it's very rare that these Pfizer reps actually get in front of the cameras and are forced to do this. In this instance, they've come to the Senate in Australia to talk, not Albert Bourla himself, but the representatives in Australia. And you see what happens when they're put under the spotlight. And this is why they avoid these type of settings, right? Because it leads to all sorts of headlines around the world, potentially, even if it's not in the media, in the alternative media, and just people like you and me talking about it and knowing what these people are up to. And we can never forget that people like Albert Bourla, they were talking about how their products 100% stop transmission. They made all sorts of claims, and it's based on those claims that many governments around the world, including Australia, told people that if you take this particular product, it will stop this from spreading, it will do this and that, and none of those things ever actually materialized. And today we're still seeing that those things were total, complete nonsense. And on that point, I saw this video, this funny video from a recent, I think a documentary or something that's going to be airing on National Geographic, or it might already have, of this very staged moment at the Pfizer head offices where Albert Bourla and his crew are watching the success of their vaccine tests or programs, whatever. Just watch the masks and how this whole show. Just watch this. Just watch this nonsense.
We made it.
I love you. We had a successful vaccine. The efficacy was more than 90%.
Oh my God!
Resulted in a success. And this success looks like the biggest scientific breakthrough of the last 100 years.
We made it.
let me just put it on mute. I'm just trying not to crack up laughing. But look at them with the masks, right? Social distancing, whatever. And then this lady here, she rips off her mask. She just sprays all her COVID everywhere. She's dancing. Burl has got his mask off. They're hugging. They're drinking now. I mean, this is all theatre. And this just goes to show you how much nonsense is involved in all of this. And if there's any reason for us to have a royal commission in this country, I know it costs money to do these things, but to bring these people in front of these commissions and question them, these type of videos are the perfect example of the evidence as to why these people need to answer our questions, and there needs to be transparency and accountability, because this theatre is complete and utter nonsense. And again, look at her dancing and waving her COVID around. Anyway, guys, let's move on to the next topic. So when I'm doing these segments, I thought I would keep the Australian linked politics as close to the start as possible, unless it's, of course, some sort of funny thing or funny video towards the end. So I always want to focus on what's happening in Australia and in mostly my state of Victoria first. So to that end, we have a MP from the Labor Party actually being told to resign from the Labor Party by Daniel Andrews because of an alleged serious assault. That's right. This is the same Daniel Andrews who, has the goal to call women who advocate for their rights full of hate and all this kind of nonsense. But within his own party, there are people there allegedly assaulting people as well. Now, I'm just making that point because, you see how Daniel Andrews speaks. And there are people in Daniel Andrews' side of the fence here who are praising him and supporting him for taking swift action. But when you start looking into the history of this particular bloke, Will Fowles, you see this is not the first time he's involved in such incidents or similar incidents. So is it really swift action by Daniel Andrews? I don't think so. But anyway, let's have a read of this article. Ringwood MP Will Fowles resigns after alleged serious assault. There's the bloke there. I got a photo of him and Dan together. Look at them. Let's just zoom in on this. Look at these guys. Cookers, I reckon. Cookers, what do you think? Anyway, so we got Labor MP Will Fowles has resigned from the party over an alleged serious assault. The member for Ringwood resigned on Saturday after the Premier's office referred the alleged assault to police. The Herald Sun understands the alleged victim is a government staff member and family friend of Premier Daniel Andrews. Mr. Andrews on Sunday would not confirm the nature of the alleged assault or if it took place inside Parliament, but said it was a very serious matter. He said the incident was completely different to when Mr. Fowles flew into a rage and smashed in the bottom half of a door at a Canberra hotel in 2019. Oh, we got a pattern here, do we? Very different, apparently. It's alleged very much more serious and totally different nature than what occurred in Canberra, Mr. Andrews said. The Herald Sun has confirmed Mr. Fowles was seen at the Parliamentary Bar on Wednesday night, with witnesses describing his behaviour as unusual. It's understood that the alleged incident is not only the complaint to have been made about Mr. Fowles in recent weeks. Mr. Andrews said it took 2 days for complaint to be made to police, allow time for his office to make inquiries and chance to speak to the alleged victim to ensure their wishes were followed. So look, it looks like a workplace incident. It looks like, from what I'm reading into this, it happened in Parliament, some type of alleged assault. And it's serious enough for the Andrews government to refer it to the police and for this bloke to be told to resign. Now, it's not clear whether that means he will just sit in the Parliament as an independent member of MP, which he's mostly entitled to do, I guess. I'm not sure what steps they're going to take there. If he does resign completely, we will also then have another by-election, most likely in the seat of, where is this guy? Ringwood MP, so in the seat of Ringwood, which would follow the by-election in Warrandyte. So interesting things happening there in the Andrews government. Look, at the end of the day, I think it's good that swift action was taken to remove this bloke. If the allegations are proven to be correct, after a police investigation that people at work were being assaulted. I mean, that's just crazy. But it goes to show that the Labor Party has interesting characters working for them. This is not all love and peace and all this kind of nonsense that they portray. These are very allegedly people who engage in assaulting members at their workplace. So I mean, what else is the Labour Party there hiding, right? What other type of people are there? What type of person is Daniel Andrews, for instance? I mean, all types of allegations about workplace culture or bullying have been made by other MPs, by women and so on. I mean, not rising to the accusation of an assault, but allegations of bullying have been made by former Labour MPs against Daniel Andrews himself. Interesting when you consider all this, right? Now, the Liberal Party, of course, they can't help themselves. This is a very interesting story because I was actually at this event that they're talking about. This was an event organised by Morgan C. Jonas. So if you're in Victoria, you'd know most likely who Morgan is, particularly if you follow a lot of the stuff around the protests against vaccine mandates and freedom rallies and so on. Morgan was heavily involved in speaking at those type of events. And of course, he also established a political party, the Victoria Freedom Party. Now, he had his 200th show, his episode of the MCJ Report, and that had a whole heap of people turn up. I was also a speaker. We had Senator Ralph Babet speaking. Avi Yemeni was speaking. We had some politicians speaking. But there was also a pastor, Brian Heath, speaking, and his daughter attended, Renee Heath, who is a member of Parliament of the Liberal Party. And because of her attendance at this right-wing secret gathering that they're talking about, they're angry. The Liberal Party is apparently very angry, certain members of the Liberal Party, and they reckon it's serious misconduct that she attended a freedom-based event. Now, this is complete nonsense. This was not a secret gathering. It was tickets were sold online, and people could purchase tickets. Any member of the public could purchase a ticket to attend the show, and the show was actually broadcast live, simulcast online on Facebook. So it's not a secret underground gathering of this far right organization or something like this. It's not. It was just like a political think tank talk group, people discussing politics and other kind of motivational things to just bring the community together, right? To get a pulse of the community, and of course, for Morgan C. Jonas to have his 200th episode. But let's listen to the news story and how they portrayed all of this.
Fresh turmoil is brewing within the Victorian Liberal Party after a rogue MP attended a secret event hosted by a right-wing political party. Renee Heath's colleagues are furious with the opposition leader now under pressure to deal with the controversy.
Liberal MP Renee Heath socialising at an event hosted by the leader of the Freedom Party.
Getting together in the name of freedom.
The Upper House MP's attendance at last night's event has infuriated Liberal colleagues, several telling 7 News it was highly inappropriate given the party's views.
The Freedom Party began at the time Victoria was in COVID-19 lockdowns. And some linked to the party have been highly sceptical of the COVID-19 vaccinations. They were highly critical of the lockdowns.
But Miss Heath says she was only there to support her father.
How about we all think of influencing 10 people and seeing the movement grow?
Brian Heath is a Liberal Party member and pastor at the City Builders Church. He's been accused of trying to expand the influence of the religious right within the Liberal Party.
This is how we're going to stop the rot. This is how we're going to strategically go into regions and shift the spheres of influence.
Renee Heath is adamant her attendance at the event hasn't breached the party's constitution. But senior Liberals have told 7 News they strongly disagree, saying her attendance is not only concerning, but a clear breach of the rules.
It's a highly disruptive event to have been involved in, so close to a Warrandyte by-election.
And it's left senior Liberals seething after weeks of making ground against the state government on Commonwealth Games.
The opposition leader's job is always very difficult. But when you have forces within your own party that are...
I'm going to stop it there, but I'll just stop it on this Muppet here. Look at this expert, complete and utter nonsense. And forgetting about this expert for a second, talking just absolute nonsense about how people who are against COVID mandates or lockdowns are somehow some sort of extreme thing now, especially after all this time has passed and we see all the nonsense. I've just been covering it earlier. Forgetting about that, the Liberal Party themselves are just so spineless to think that a daughter could not attend an event where her father is speaking, and this is not some sort of underground, evil type far right gathering or some crap like they're trying to portray, right? This is just people in the community talking about politics, and her father happens to be speaking. I mean, what kind of party is this? Like, what are we heading for in our state and in our country at large, where people can't associate freely and discuss political ideas, right? I mean, at that particular event, there was Senator Babbitt from the United Australia Party, and it was like a lot of different political views are being addressed there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like this whole idea of the Liberal Party just kind of hiding out, and they can't attend other events, they can't engage with the community, they have to get some sort of special permission when their family members are involved. I mean, complete and utter nonsense. These people are out of touch, and the fact that media even gives this stuff time of day shows you how deranged everything has become, right? I mean, these people are completely controlled. Daniel Andrews runs the show, as far as I'm concerned, and these guys are just patsies, right? Just patsies, complete and utter nonsense. Now, staying on the theme of our crazy state of Victoria, now Victoria is known for having safe injecting rooms. We have one in Richmond, very close to a school where people OD and sometimes school kids walk past and so on. So it's no surprise that we've also been having a lot of community contention around the second proposed safe injecting room, which they want to put in the heart of our city near Flinders Street Station, near De Grave Street. Again, complete nonsense. But now we also have added to that this Sobering Up Centre in Collingwood. That's right. So for all the drunks who are wondering about the city, they can go to this Sobering Up Centre in Collingwood now. Look, alcohol abuse and people being drunk and walking around the city maybe is a problem, and there might need to be solutions for that. Whether that solution is building a centre for them in a suburb of the city where they all congregate and hang out, and potentially who knows what happens at these places. I don't know if that's necessarily the direction that we need to be looking at going in our state, but we have all these type of social programs, right? Victoria is known for experimenting with these type of programs. I'm going to read this particular story, and you guys can make up your mind on this. Again, I think these programs being inserted into areas, now Collingwood's already a bit sketchy, but being inserted into these areas might increase, more trouble, might create more issues for the people in those areas. And do they really need to be able to? Do they really have to put up with drunks walking toward them or being in the vicinity of their houses? Victoria's first Sobering Up Centre is set to open. Here's how it came about. Victoria's first dedicated Sobering Up Centre will be set up in Collingwood ahead of the decriminalisation of public drunkenness in the state. I mean, if you're living in the state of Victoria, I guess with all the crap that's going on, I mean, you might as well be drinking drunk or drugged up, right? It might be a way to deal with the absolute carnage that is being perpetrated on our state by the Andrews government, the cost of living crisis, and all sorts of other degenerate nonsense that is being pushed into the public. I mean, can you blame people sometimes? The 20-bed facility is a key part of Andrews' government commitment to shift away from dealing with public drunkenness as a crime and treating it as a health issue. Under the revised approach, outreach services will support an intoxicated public and transport them to a safe place to rest and sober up if necessary, Mental Health Minister Gabrielle Williams said. While a safe space for many would be a family member, friend or carer, for some it would be at the centre, she said. When will Victorian Sobering Centre open? The new policy is expected to take effect on Melbourne Cup Day, November 7th. It's a great day for this to open, actually. With construction of the Collingwood Centre slated to start soon. The site was chosen for its accessibility and proximity to the CBD, as well as the area's high demand for public intoxication services, Williams said. For too long, public drunkenness laws have caused great pain to some of our community's most vulnerable, she said. There is still a lot of work to do, but there's no doubt these services will save lives. So yeah, you get the idea there. On the face of it, yes, should we criminalize people being drunk out on the streets and lock them up? I don't think so. But should we be encouraging a society or a community where drunkenness is at the forefront of how people deal with issues? I don't think so. So there's a balance to be struck here. And whether this Sobering Up Centre is the right balance, I'm not sure. I do have my reservations against this. Whether they should be just taken up to a police station and kept overnight in some sort of holding cell for their own safety. That might, be a bad thing. This particular facility might have more of a comfortable area for them to sober up in. Look, this is a lot of money going to these type of services, and whether it's needed or not, we'll see in the future. Let me know what your thoughts are. Now, over the weekend, Anthony Albanese was up in Arnhem Land up north, spruiking the voice to Parliament at the Garma Festival. I believe that's what it's called. Now, this festival was not attended by members of the opposition like Pete Dutton and so on. And there's a bit of controversy around that. And they made it clear that they don't want to attend these events, just one-off events to show their faces and, you know, make these claims. They're interested in long-term solutions. Now, Anthony Albanese, of course, is spruiking the voice and trying to make a recommitment to the public and really help get their numbers up in the polls. But it looks like it didn't actually go to plan, with a very recent poll now showing that even Victoria is looking like, as a state, going down the no side. That's right. Overwhelmingly, Australia-wide, the no side now is getting up in the polls. Now, polls are, of course, one thing, and everything that happens on the actual day of the referendum, which is slated to be in October sometime, is what's most important. But it can help us gauge the sentiments of the community at large. So let's have a read of this article, and I'll share some thoughts on this. Redbridge poll finds majority intend to vote no to Indigenous voice to Parliament. The yes case for the voice is almost unsalvageable. With a new poll finding, it is now behind, with a majority of voters in every state and territory. In the first survey to be taken since the release of the official yes and no pamphlets last month, a Redbridge poll conducted exclusively for News Corp has found the no case is now ahead 56% to 44% nationally. I mean, if this poll is correct, that is a big deal, that massive change. And in a worrying omen for Albanese's government's bid to entrench an Indigenous voice to Parliament in the Constitution, the no case lead blew out to 59% when voters were exposed to the arguments contained in the official material. Redbridge found that after hearing the yes and no cases, 1 in 4 people who said they were leaning towards supporting the voice switched their vote to no. It also found that 37%, the proportion of rusted on no voters, is almost twice the 21% of who say they are determined to vote yes. No is ahead 56-44% in New South Wales, 55-45% in Victoria, 63-37% in Queensland, and 54-46% in other states and territories. The Redbridge poll shows support for the voice is dividing Australians by educational level and income, with those with degrees and higher incomes in favour, while the overwhelming majority of everyone else is against it. Of course, a lot of times this division by class on these type of issues, these intellectuals, a lot of these intellectuals, the intelligentsia, the people that think they're know-it-alls type that come across like this, educated as such, as they're looked on at here, they do lean towards just supporting blindly a lot of government policies, whereas the working class who, they might not have the same type of educational degrees or whatever, but they're hardworking Australians, they're a part of the community, and they can see BS a lot of the time, much clearer than these other educated people can see. We saw that during COVID, right? The intelligentsia, the educational class during that time folded to the whims of the government very easily. And today we're finding out that the working class, the people that stood up to a lot of this stuff, were in most instances correct to have done so. In this instance, a lot of people who are from working class backgrounds are more diverse in the sense that they have more interactions with lots of different types of people. They're more multicultural in many instances, and they usually more from migrant families, and they might be opposed to things like racism being enshrined in the Constitution. As an opinion that's being shared around, I'm not saying that's specifically what's happening to the fact checkers who are watching this, but many people share that opinion of this referendum. So yeah, look, the polls are not looking good for Andrews. We also have, even though they have an overwhelming support from institutions and corporations in this country, right? Anthony Albanese is always boasting about how all the sporting codes and all these big corporations are all behind him. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, right? People, particularly again, working class people, don't necessarily look up to these celebrities, these football clubs, and these what else is it? Like these corporations as the go-to and be-all of everything that they should live their lives by. In this instance, this particular story caught my eyes because Dan's Murphy staff claim they feel pressured to wear yes t-shirts in support for Indigenous voice to Parliament. So a lot of shops are doing this type of thing, right? I think Big W recently, they wound back some of their support for the voice in store because it wasn't going well with customers. And in this instance, we have a liquor store telling people to wear T-shirts with the Yes campaign logo. Like, this corporate involvement in the voice should ring alarm bells for people. These corporations are usually interested in their virtue signaling because they know that by participating in these systems, they can get benefits from the government. It's not necessarily always, in my opinion, about benefiting the Yes campaign, the people that they're saying that they're going to help. It's not always about them. This is about their bottom line. Again, my opinion. Now, related to all of this, we have these heritage laws, these very controversial laws which were passed in Western Australia, where farmers couldn't even, dig something in their land without getting permission from these Aboriginal councils and so on. And it's caused so much controversy over the last couple of weeks that they're looking at stepping it back. And I think this story clearly illustrates the dangers that we're facing with something like the voice to Parliament being enshrined in the Constitution, right? At least in this instance, it looks like the government can roll it back, okay? It looks like it can be changed. Now, once you insert something in the Constitution, the dynamics of rolling that back, particularly if we start to see problems with it, is not the same, right? It's not the same. So this might be a bit of a bellwether for people who are on the fence to see this is potentially what could happen. I mean, this is my opinion. Maybe I'm misreading this. You can tell me in the comments. But I feel like this is a great example for people in the no camp to show people that, look, this is the problem with introducing these type of rules, because it can actually end up disadvantaging the community at large, and in particular people who are working in certain businesses like farming. It could impact them very adversely. The Western Australian government will scrap its controversial Aboriginal cultural heritage laws within days, the ABC understands. Premier Roger Cook and Minister for the Aboriginal Affairs Tony Booty will make an announcement early next week. It follows months of harsh criticism of the laws and the government in the lead up to their implementation on July 1st and in the weeks following. The criticism has been led by WA's opposition parties, the National and Liberals, along with farmer groups including WA Farmers and the Pastoralists and Graziers Association. It's understood the state will revert to operating under the 1972 Aboriginal Cultural Heritage legislation. The new legislation came into force to modernise the existing process, which saw major problems exposed in the wake of the destruction of the Juukan Gorge. The laws require some WA landowners to check for the presence of cultural heritage before conducting any activities that may compromise such sites. Where a risk exists, landowners may need to seek permits or prepare management plans depending on the type of activity and the extent to which the land will be cleared or disturbed. The government also made numerous exemptions for lower level works that did not previously exist. Anyway, I'm not going to go over this in much detail, but it's something that you can potentially look into if you want to see how the voice may be linked to all this, because even here, this particular article that came out recently, 2 hours ago, today actually, has WA's Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act been canned after voice pressure from Albanese. Let's have a read of this actually. Initially, the line was unwavering. Under Mark McGowan, WA Labor refocused on a budge on either scrapping or delaying its controversial Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act. It was continuation of McGowan's uncompromising approach, loved by some but criticised by others, to lead in the state in which he enjoyed an unparalleled popularity. But McGowan is now gone. And in his place, new Premier Roger Cook faces his biggest challenge to date since taking up the mantle. Confusion about WA's Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act has fueled concerns about the potential ramifications for the looming referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament. If the new heritage laws are repealed, it is likely a sign of Roger Cook bowing to federal pressure amid declining support for the voice. According to political commentator Peter Kennedy, it's clear that the controversy associated with the heritage legislation is getting confused with the voice referendum, he said. I would imagine that Anthony Albanese has picked up the phone to Roger Cook and said, Roger, get this off the agenda. It's interfering with the voice message. So, look, I think this is for support in WA, because people in WA are actually getting worked up about this because of this particular law is causing all sorts of issues for people across the state there, and it's putting them off the voice. So this particular article says, has Anthony Albanese involved himself in the process and, potentially called up Roger Cook and said, hey, let's get this off the table so people aren't focused on this, right? But I think we should focus on this. So go do some study into what's happened here. And if you're talking about the voice of someone else, show them this, show them what happened in WA, because I don't think they want people to know what happened in WA. Now on to news from around the world, and normally I leave coverage of the US election till the very end to give you guys updates, but of course this week we have the persecution and prosecution of Donald J. Trump. This is a story that's, of course, been done to death by the mainstream media because they love this story. This is their story. This has been their baby since 2016. Since Donald Trump won, they have found all types of stories to talk about Donald Trump in the negative frame, right? Negative light. Investigation after investigation, impeachment after impeachment trial. Now we have these multiple indictments. I think we're counting 3, maybe 4, 5 coming up. Crazy stuff, right? Like if this was happening to any other politician in the West, we would say that there's potentially an issue going in here, which in my opinion appears like a witch hunt. Like this is the type of things we see in banana republics around other parts of the world, in South Asia, in parts of Latin America, in parts of Eastern Europe. We have these issues in parts of Africa. We're seeing these kind of where political opponents are locked up, where there's always some sort of show trial. There's all these allegations, sometimes people are obviously, there's coups that happen. It hasn't gone to that level yet, but we're seeing, I think, in my opinion, again, a lot of lawfare happening here around Donald Trump. Now, I'm just going to look at these particular 3 cases we have against him, indictments at the moment, which is, and is in The Guardian, the classified documents case in Florida, hush money case in New York, January 6th case in Washington, and then potentially the Georgia election, 2020 election meddling case in Georgia, and E. Jean Carroll lawsuits in New York. Sorry. So a lot of, Donald Trump is being tied up in the courts, and this, again, comes across as lawfare, particularly this like very recent one. I mean, some of the other indictments have been very laughable, but in my personal opinion, the one regarding January 6th is very laughable. And a lot of it touches on, my opinion, again, I'm just saying my opinion because, again, like a lot of this is censorship laden, or fact checkers love correcting these things because, they have Trump derangement syndrome. When it comes to this January 6th latest indictment, it centers around free speech, right? It centers around the ability for political opponents and, people who are front runners in an election to say that they don't agree with the process, or they think the process has been fraudulent. This pretending by American the justice system, current DOJ, that somehow American elections are above board compared to anything else in the world. And if you question these elections, somehow it is a criminal matter. That is crazy. Like, that is next level crazy. And a lot of people who are blinded by Trump derangement syndrome are buying into this type of nonsense. Like, if we see this stuff happening in other countries, we call it out for what it is. And that is an abuse of the democratic process of elections. Now, I'm not saying that anyone like Trump should be above the law. But if you look at how this is being administered, how these cases are being waged, and the timing of these cases, it does look like sophisticated lawfare that is dressed up to look like it's in the pursuit of justice. But in many respects, when you have the front runner, Donald Trump, against Joe Biden, and Donald Trump is leading in the polls, many of the polls that are being given, even on aggregate, he's leading in the polls. He's leading the Republican nomination. These things that are going to happen if he's running in the presidency, if he's given the nomination, are going to lead to plenty of instances of Trump wasting time in these courtrooms when he should be out campaigning. Now, knowing Donald Trump, how that impacts him, it's not the normal regular presidential running guy, right? This might actually work in his favor, and it already is. It's given him a boost in the polls. It helps him actually relitigate the entirety of the January 6th drama if he wanted to. Like, they're putting the January 6th, or everything that happened during the elections, the 2020 elections, in the front and mind of the discussion leading up to the 2024 election. And a lot of the things that were shut out during that time might now be relitigated by Donald Trump in an open forum, right? They're scared of that. They're terrified of that as well. And they're trying to shut that down as well. So I'm going to get to that. Let's just have a look at some of these posts. This one I found was an opinion piece in 2020. The Constitution lets the Electoral College choose the winner. They should choose Clinton. Now, this is kind of the opinion pieces the media were running about the Electoral College, and how the processes can be, not interfered with, but how it can be done constitutionally. And these are the type of charges that are against Trump, that he tried to use these processes to his advantage later on. But, this is what they're talking about, right? This is another article from Reuters. The states with close contest between Republican President Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden could produce competing slates of electors, one certified by the governor and the other by the legislature. Now, it's a lot of these allegations around that Trump actually tried to do this, and his lawyers were involved in the process of doing this, talking to people about this, and this is an assault on democracy. But as you can see in this article in the Reuters beforehand, this is just a normal part of the American political process. They always talk about this type of nonsense, but they're using it against Trump. Now, recently he came out and said, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." All right. And Jack Smith, the prosecutor in Washington, put this to the judge, saying, "Look, he's trying to intimidate witnesses already. Anything that's going to come up in this particular case to do with the J6 trial that they're having against Trump, any of the discovery documents, we have to stop him from discussing that by barring him, by silencing him, by gagging him." Right? They're trying to hold him in contempt of the process already, and they want to lock him up even before the trial. But I don't know. I think this is all working in Trump's favor, and he knows it. He said here, "I need one more indictment to ensure my election." No, I don't think anyone else could actually do this, what Trump is doing right now. Sorry, I'm just all over the place with this story because there's so much to cover in this. This is Anthony Blinken, the secretary, right, in the US. The United States strongly condemns Russia's conviction of opposition leader Alexei Navalny on politically motivated charges. The Kremlin cannot silence the truth. Navalny should be released. Now, this was on the 5th of August, 2023. This is a legitimate post. And it is so funny because people are calling him out in the comments for this. And it shows you that the US has this elevated view of themselves, that they are above all of these type of actions, right? That the US themselves could never run these type of witch trials against their political opponents. That Joe Biden, the Democrats, even the Republicans, if the shoe was on the other foot, would never use lawfare, would never jail political opponents. The US is above all that. And we see that throughout history, whether it's them invading countries for freedom, to spread democracy, let's say Iraq, Afghanistan, all these kind of things. Maybe some people might say it's legitimate what they did. Many other people around the world would question, why are they doing this? Like this kind of imperialist US invasion of countries for other particular reasons. Like, where was the WMDs, for instance? Right? They never see themselves held to the same type of standards that they hold everyone else to. And in this case, they're condemning Russia for politically motivated charges against an opposition leader, right? The Kremlin cannot silence the truth. Well, maybe the Kremlin can't silence the truth, and maybe that's all true, but it looks like in the US, at least, Washington can silence the truth right now under the Biden administration. At least that's what they're attempting to do, in my opinion. This is another interesting video. Let's just play this. I'll leave this for you to just consider that the fact that Joe Biden has been openly talking about doing this to Trump, right? This is not some sort of mystery if you've been following this. He has been openly talking about how Trump should face serious investigation, and that, if Merrick Garland of the Justice Department should pursue that if given the opportunity. All right. And this is against his political opponents. So let's just watch that with knowing that. So get this. Joe Biden repeatedly refuses to comment on the Trump indictments. He insists that he has an entirely independent DOJ. Do you remember this?
Mr. President, what do you say to Americans to convince them that they should trust the independence and fairness of the Justice Department when your predecessor, Donald Trump, repeatedly attacks it?
Because you notice I have never once, not one single time, suggested to the Justice Department what they should do or not do relative to bringing a charge or not bringing a charge. I'm honest. I'm honest. I mean, that was a little creepy, but not so quick. An April New York Times article titled Biden's Response to Trump's Indictment, 4 Ways to Say No Comment. He's really good at that, isn't he?
Well, they have this passage buried 14 paragraphs down. They always bury the really big news way deep down, as you'll notice here. Here's the quote. He does have opinions, he being Joe Biden. In the past, Mr. Biden privately told his close circle of advisors that Mr. Trump posed a threat to democracy, and here's the big point, and he should be prosecuted for his role in the events of January 6th. He also told confidants that he wanted Attorney General Merrick B. Garland to stop acting like a ponderous judge and to take decisive action. That is stunning. Biden privately told aides that Trump should be prosecuted for January 6th, and he wanted Merrick Garland to take decisive action? That is an explosive allegation buried in the New York Times.
I mean, look, it's all out in the open. All of this is happening out in the open. And if you got TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, you can't see any of this, unfortunately. If you're like me, watching from Australia, watching from the outside, and like many of us who are watching this from the outside, looking into American politics, I can see it. There are people in Australia, of course, with TDS as well, where everything is orange man bad. But I think most reasonable people, once they're presented with this type of evidence and these type of statements that these people are making, can see it for what it is. And it's a great shame that America's gone down this path. I don't think they recover from this, because I think the cycle will now continue. And it's unfortunate, but I don't blame them. I don't blame Donald Trump if he gets into office and, let's say all this brushes over and he defeats all of this stuff and he gets into office. Yeah, bring the retribution, right? Take revenge in that way. I mean, that's kind of the feeling of many people would have, right? Based on these events. Now, again, I still think that's a very bad thing, but just based on what's happened over the last couple of years, and in particular the last couple of months with these indictments against Trump, you couldn't blame the guy if he did actually go down this path. Again, very sad for the United States of America, very sad that they've become this banana republic, and it doesn't bode well for the rest of the world, because they will either emulate a lot of this type of thing, or they will just carry on how they are. These people cannot set the standard for democracy and upholding constitutional values and all this kind of stuff that they all preach about all the time. It's complete and utter nonsense. Now, about a week ago, a disturbing video came out of South Africa where we had a leader of a political movement there called the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters. Julius Malema is his name, as a controversial figure in South African politics, formerly of the ANC. And he says some out there stuff. And there was a video circulating about a week ago of him at their 10th year anniversary rally talking about killing white people, committing genocide, literally, and also, slaying particularly white farmers. Now, I'm going to play this video first, and then I'm going to discuss this video with you guys. Let's have a look.
Alliance shoot to kill Gamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa. Attention.
So yeah, he's saying that kill the boar, kill the farmer. Boar, pretty much means white person in South Africa. Now, look, this has raised some eyebrows. Again, originally on alternative media and some South African media against this type of comments, saying that, we should be condemning this type of comments, right? They're literally calling for the murder of white people, including farmers. Now, to that end, we have heard all sorts of excuses being made for this, even from Julius himself, and saying that this is a struggle song, a historical song that South Africans sing to remember a time when things were a bit different in terms of their experience with the law enforcement, and in particular the treatment by white people in that country during the era of apartheid in particular. And this struggle song, they're saying, is justified as a legacy, kind of remembering that time period, a part of their strength. And a lot of outlets, even in the West, have covered it up and brushed these type of comments off. Now, I think it's crazy. I think in our modern world, we condemn these type of comments, right? Let's forget about South Africa. If this happened anywhere else, if you had some white people sing some struggle song from the era of slavery about how great they were in enslaving some black people and killing them, that would be condemned, even despite the historical context. You can't have white people running around saying they want to murder black people. Like that type of language is condemned. In a similar fashion, was struggle song or not, what is being said here should be condemned. But the press in the West have not condemned it. In fact, they've made excuses for it to the point where people like Elon Musk even, who is of South African heritage, have come out and actually pointed this out on some of the articles on, I think, the New York Times especially. Now, Julius Malema was actually asked about this as well, and I think his answer is even more worse than actually the song that he sang here. So let's have a look at what he said about this.
Employment is in the land. Let's get our land and let's work our land. I'm hated for that. What? Where? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we've not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal call.
Cry babies. Cry babies.
I'm not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now.
I can't give you a guarantee of the future, especially when things are going the way they are. Employment is in the...
So yeah, anyway, he's asked about that type of song. And I think there's been controversy with this song before as well, so this could be from a previous video, but he's saying, I haven't called for it, for now at least. We're just singing a song for now, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, these people are openly talking in this fashion, and still media in the woke West, virtue signaling West, find it very difficult to condemn this hatred towards white people. And we know there's issues in South Africa with attacks on white farmers, in particular murders, rapes, outright brutality against these farmers, which is also another story that's denied by the West sometimes. Crazy stuff. This is what Elon Musk wrote about this. The New York Times actually has the nerve to support calls for genocide. If there ever was a time to cancel the publication, it is now. You can read the articles for free anyway using removepaywall.com. Kill the Boer song fuels backlash in South Africa and US. Right-wing commentators claim that an old anti-apartheid chant is a call to anti-white violence, but historians and left-wing politicians who embraces it say it should not be taken literally. Don't take it literally. It's just a song from the past, right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if some other song from white people sang something like that? And we can actually, so you don't have to look that far. This is a song recently tried that in a small town by a country singer in the US, and they said he was racist and inciting violence. And all he was doing was showing images of people in America committing all sorts of violence and vandalism against private property, particularly during riots by BLM and so on. And he was just saying, try that in a small town and see what happens. Not in itself a racist comment. I think most people want to protect their property, and small town America might protect their property compared to these woke cities like you're seeing in New York and other places where all sorts of vandalism happens without much pushback or stopping from the law enforcement or police as a policy point of view. Whereas when we have, kill the white farmer, just a song, don't take it literally. So I thought this image actually illustrated this point very, very well. But I wanted to show you, even in the US, depending on who is in political office, this is, what's her name? I forgot her name. The name will come back to me, but there's some issues with her and, her brother. Ilhan Omar, that's her name. Ilhan Omar. You should look up the story of her and her brother. Again, opinion. Apparently it didn't really happen this way, but look it up yourself. Let's have a look at what she says about the US. And she's a sitting member of the American Parliament, the government in the Democrats. Let's have a listen to what she says about white people to Al Jazeera of all places.
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. I would say our country.
I reckon this anti-white rhetoric needs to stop. All types of racism, all types of hate towards people of different colors needs to obviously stop. But there is this insistence in the community from certain left-wing politicians, in this case Ilhan Omar, and publications, particularly the media, where they look over it, right? They let it happen. It's okay for these type of comments to be made. And I think it's just crazy. And just to end off, guys, just a few short little news stories that you might have missed that I found quite interesting. First, we had the vegan influencer Sahana Daat dies of starvation and exhaustion in Malaysia after switching to an extreme tropical fruit diet. A vegan raw food influencer who lived on an extreme diet of exotic fruit has reportedly died from starvation and exhaustion. Sahana Samasanova, originally from Russia and known as Sahana Daat on social media, had been on a raw plant-based diet for 10 years that consisted of fruits, sunflower seed sprouts, fruit smoothies, and juices. There she is there. So look, I don't know if these kind of extreme vegan diet trends that we're seeing on social media especially is always the right path to go down, particularly for clout. Now, this is apparently, people are alleging that this is why she died, but look, it's an interesting story that you might want to read up on this, because it is a trend that I'm seeing, these type of vegan diets where they're telling you to just, eat, have fruit smoothies and eat oils and seeds and all this kind of stuff. Next one is this, I find pretty funny. End of an era. Zoom tells employees to return to office for work. Now, Zoom is, of course, a platform that a lot of people use during the pandemic and all this kind of stuff to do work from home with. And we have this issue even in Australia where public servants especially don't want to go back to work, right? They're complaining. Even people in the private sector, they want to work from home and they want to do these Zoom calls and stuff like this, right? People have become lazy. But even Zoom itself have now told their employees to return to work. I don't understand what is with this generation that refuse to go into work and work from an office. Now I understand there's practical benefits sometimes to working from home, and for some particular jobs it might not actually matter. But if a business is paying you and telling you to come into the office to do the job, I think it's not the right thing to be doing to tell them, no, actually I want to work from home, which is what's happening in our entitled society at the moment. So it's quite funny when you see the story of Zoom telling their employees to return to the office. These are the people responsible, right? These are the people responsible. And this is a fun one. Threads. I've been covering this since Threads started as a competitor to kill Twitter, to kill X. And I think they've seen a plummet of about 80% decline in their active user base. 80%, like every week it just keeps increasing, right? Started at like 50% drop, 60% drop, 70, now it's up to an 80% drop. In the next couple of weeks, probably it's going to be 100% drop in active users, right? Threads is struggling, and all the woke people that left Twitter, saying that they're going to go to Threads because Twitter is so toxic. They're actually back on Twitter, right? No one's engaging with them in Threads. So Threads, Mark Zuckerberg's crappy experiment has not actually been fruitful whatsoever for him. It's a complete flop. Like many of the other companies and things that he runs and engages in, it's been a complete disaster. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for hanging on in there and joining me for this episode of In Case You Missed It. I'm going to wrap up the show here, but as a bonus, if you want to stick around and watch my talk or my speech at the secret gathering that they're saying that happened at the Morgan C. Jonas show, which wasn't a secret gathering, complete nonsense. I will attach it, or I will play it at the end of this video. So if you want to hang out and watch that video and just hear me share some of my thoughts about my experience of covering news independently, particularly on the streets of Melbourne during the lockdowns, it will be available after this video, so you can hang around for that. But otherwise, like always, thank you for joining me for this episode of In Case You Missed It. You can find me on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, and Odyssey at The Real Rukshan, or just try looking up my name, Rukshan Fernando. You should be able to find me that way as well. But here it is, my speech, my talk, my interview with Morgan C. Jonas at the Freedom event, the so-called Freedom event, which was more so just the Morgan C. Jonas report. I encourage you to also check out the Morgan C. Morgan C. Jonas Show, which is available at the mcjreport.com. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Moving, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? The next guest really needs no introduction. Many of you became aware of this highly talented expert during the COVID-19 protests. He captured all of the action. At times, there were thousands upon thousands of people witnessing the horror that transpired on the streets of Victoria. Thank you to this man. He was pepper sprayed more times than I would like to remember, but his resolute was unwavering. Please make him feel welcome, Rukshan Fernando. Take a seat.
It's almost midnight.
That's crazy. Everyone is basically here for you, Rukshan.
Yeah? Are they not here for Avi?
Oh, wait, where's Avi? Rukshan, talk to us. It's been a wild ride. You developed a very large following online, really, because I think your content was very unique during, say, 2020, 2021. You were doing something that very few people actually in the world were doing. You were live streaming continuously for hours upon hours on end these protests that took place in Melbourne, so that anyone who was effectively confused by, say, the mainstream narrative or the general reporting at the time, right, could actually look up your broadcast and find out what happened. Would you mind talking a little bit about what motivated you to capture these protests in the length and detail of which you did?
Yeah, I guess what's sad about what I did, I'm saying sad because what I did was very simple, just point the camera and film something. It was probably the easiest thing that anyone could do, and the fact that these media organizations that have access to all this equipment, millions of dollars and all this kind of technology, couldn't do something so simple during that time. They refused to do things like this. Just really goes to show you the power of technology that we have today, the ordinary person, what we can do if we just point our camera and film something. So I think I just did something very simple and very basic, but it just happened to cut across because the media weren't doing it, and they weren't doing it intentionally. It wasn't because they couldn't do it, it was very intentional. And I think that's very depressing and sad, to be honest, because this is what you see in third world countries, in the developing world. We get these videos from people's phones that we see of disastrous things happening in their country. We don't see it from their media stations, we see it from mobile phones. And here it is happening in Australia. People are watching what's happening in their country on Rukshan's live stream. It's completely ridiculous, but that is what it was. And I don't think it was anything remarkable, but in many ways I feel like it's a very sad indictment on our media in this country.
Yeah, most definitely, and I agree with your sentiments on that. And there were mainstream media corporations from around the world that were pulling clips from your footage and playing those clips on television. Now, you sustained injuries, I would say, during the course of your filming. I recall several instances where you were pepper sprayed quite severely, yet that did not seem to discourage you from picking up your camera, dusting yourself off, and capturing the protests the next day. Would you mind talking a little bit about why you held the commitment to capturing the, let's just say, action on the ground despite the adversity that you faced throughout that process?
Yeah, sure. Look, the first time that I actually went physically out to a protest was at the Shrine, I think in October 2020. And I haven't told this story to anyone, but I got there very early before, a lot of the protesters showed up. I went there very early because I live very close in the city. And I was approached by the police, and they started talking to me, asking me what I'm doing, obviously. That's what they were doing. And I was physically shaking during that time. I'm embarrassed to talk about it, but that's what happened to me. And after they spoke to me, I felt at that moment, how dare these people speak like this? And this is not the country that I believe I live in, and I'm not going to let them do this to me. And then from that moment on, when they started coming to my house over and over, all that kind of stuff, that actually just built up my resolve to actually tell me that I'm doing the right thing. And that's why I kept going out, because what they were doing was wrong. The fact that they were just attacking people on the street, spraying journalists and all this kind of stuff. Of course, if you're a legitimate journalist, you have to go back out. You know, we celebrate that type of journalism. We send people off to other countries, war journalists, whatever it is. That's what they go do. So if you're not going to go out there and do that, you might as well not do this type of work. You know, you might as well just stay at home if you really believe that you're an independent journalist or whatever it is. So I couldn't stop myself from going.
And I respect that entirely. I think that deserves an extra round, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so, yeah, there's so many questions that I would like to ask you, and of course we have a limited time frame. When I think back to the protest, it was a very crazy time. Of course, it was very volatile. There was a huge amount of risk involved. And to add to the previous comments you made, when the real Rukshan on Facebook is pulling numbers that were dwarfing the mainstream media coverage, all right, dwarfing the mainstream media coverage, I think that was enough evidence that the mainstream media was not doing their job, and we had people like Avi as well from Rebel News and Rukshan really standing up and carrying that torch. Now that things have calmed down a bit, and of course we never hope for the scenes of which we witnessed throughout the past few years to return, I've noticed a trend, I would say, with the type of people that follow your content, my content, falling into what I just loosely described as being black-pilled, feeling very depressed, feeling that there's no hope, and many people, as a result of this, are no longer enjoying their lives. I know that you have an interesting perspective on this topic. I was just hoping you could share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of it's by design. Government, media, they want us to feel this way. I think it's been discussed at length today that a lot of this is by design. And what I feel the right thing to do is, whether it's, you know, topics that we're discussing, the disinformation bill, The Voice, all of these things, you know, we have an opportunity to change that narrative. And the work that I do today, obviously there's no lockdowns, there's none of this kind of stuff for me to live stream. But for me, my challenge is to challenge the mainstream media. You know, when I say things like defund the ABC, I actually mean defund the ABC. Because, yeah, because these organizations, you know, the network televisions, they are doing a great disservice to our country. They are not allowing people to debate and discuss ideas. This thing with The Voice, these things should be debated in the community, and our media stations, particularly the ABC, who is funded by the taxpayer, should be out there getting everyone's point of view. They should not be supporting one particular narrative, which is what they're doing now. And I think that's disgusting, because they're taking all our money to do that. And it's up to independent media, citizen journalists, what you're doing today, Morgan. This has to be the future that challenges these people, because the corporate media is not going to do it. So I think this is how we change that around. And by doing these things, having these type of events, people tuning into independent content creators and watching this content, then you don't have to be black-pilled or whatever. You can share these perspectives and get different ideas. Again, I think it's very sad and unfortunate that we have to do these things, but that is just how it is. And you know, Australia, there's an opportunity for any of us that want to be in that position to do that. But you know, it's challenging, but we have to do it, is my view.
I agree with that. We have to do it. There's no option. If regular people don't stand up and speak the very obvious truth, well, we can't count on Channel 9 to do that job for us, can we? So I'd like to ask your opinion, Rukshan, for people out there in the general public maybe feeling that they have a voice, something to contribute, looking to get started in the independent media space, maybe they have some reservations. What advice would you give to people like that?
Yeah, I think just do it, because three years ago, August 1st, about 3 years ago, is when I started my page, The Real Rukshan. And I was just making memes and doing content and stuff like this, right? Just making fun of Daniel Andrews. Because it wasn't very hard to do that. It was very easy to do that.
Easy.
But just putting yourself out there, like I've looked at myself from when I started to today, and I don't think at the start I would have had the confidence to be up here and, you know, speaking like this. But over time, I've built that. I've learned from people around me. You know, you just gotta do it and put yourself out there. And I think a lot of people don't think that they have a interesting story or interesting message to share. But a lot of the times, the most interesting things I heard was from people on the street. Like the stories that people were telling me were so interesting. And you can share that, and we have the platforms to do that. I know there's censorship, and I know that's a big issue. if you keep fighting against it, you can push back. There is people like Elon Musk. I know people have different viewpoints on these type of people, but there are opportunities there because of what's happening overseas to make headwinds into these spaces and have our voices heard. So I think don't be afraid. This thing with the censorship, misinformation, disinformation bill, I agree with everything that's been said here, particularly by Ralph Babet. This is the most dangerous thing, and they're trying to shut down people like me. They are terrified of independent content creators. They are terrified of just ordinary people speaking, but they are also mostly terrified of people who have influence, who are not controlled by corporations and by these media people. This bill is designed to shut them out. They're not worried about just you and a friend that's having a chat on Messenger or something like this. They're worried about people like myself or Avi Yemeni cutting across the mainstream media and challenging their narratives, because that's what they cannot control and stop. And they saw that happening during COVID, and they saw how everyone switched off from them, and they want to shut it down, because the next time that something like this happens, whether it's climate hoax or whatever it is, they want to control the message 100%. And if there's anything that I'm willing to go back on the street for, protest, live stream, whatever it is protest against this crazy disinformation, misinformation crap that they're trying to shove down our throats from Canberra. Because these people have no respect for you. They have no respect for the future, and they're just trying to control every single thing that they possibly can.
Yeah, I agree. And Rukshan has hit the nail on the head in regards to this bill. This bill warrants a mass protest to the likes of the numbers we saw, if not bigger. The risk to our freedom is huge. So if you're willing to get the word out there and to talk to your friends, then I'd be willing to be involved in the organisation of such an event. And I think Harrison might be interested as well. Now, Rukshan, allow me to ask you, first of all, thanks for having me on your podcast yesterday along with Avi. I had a great time. We had a really interesting conversation, and everybody should check out the Opposition podcast. The setup that Rukshan has is it's world class, and it's been a real pleasure to see your independent media platform evolve and develop, and to also see you develop as a true commentator. What does the future hold for yourself?
Look, I'm just putting myself out there. I'm doing what I think that needs to be done. Many people would know that I'm also a wedding photographer. I'm not doing a business pitch here. A lot of my trolls will bring up the fact that I'm a wedding photographer to put me down. This is why they do this. I've had politicians put me down, call me a wedding photographer. People try to put down people who are a part of the working class, that entrepreneurs that do businesses. This is all by design that they try to do this. But why I'm saying this is because I decided, to go down that path when I, stopped doing my law degree. And today, I've decided, not today, but very recently when I started doing this podcast and stuff, I'm in a position as a wedding photographer, because of the career that I've managed to build, to pause that in such a way that I can, focus also on doing my independent journalism and creating something that I'm really proud of, and that I think people around might want to join in and watch. Right? That's what I'm doing, and collaborating with Avi Yemeni from Rebel News and other people like yourself. That's all a part of the experience for me, and the future that I see myself doing is something that I'm committed to. So if you see me doing this work and making these videos, I'm not just doing it on the side anymore while I'm doing weddings. I'm committed to it, and I'm doing it in a way that I really want to challenge the mainstream media companies in this country, because I can't stand them. I cannot stand them.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why each and every one of us need to support Rukshan's work to the full extent of our capability to get the word out there. Rukshan's voice alone is not enough. He needs the support of the general public to share his content, to get the word out there, to provide a countermeasure to the very destructive mainstream narratives that have plagued our country for too long. So ladies and gentlemen, please give it up one more time for Rukshan Fernando.
Thanks, bro.